Hello, and welcome to That Time We Woke Up in a Podcast and Had to Explain Manga, our heated adventures overanalyzing manga that we find interesting. My name is Sam, and this week we read Kill 6 Billion Demons by Tom Parkinson-Morgan, also known as Abbadon. We read Book 1, also titled Kill 6 Billion Demons. Of course.
To my fellow readers out there who are caught up with this comic, I know that there's going to be some misgendering of a certain character. I did not correct my fellow hosts because that is still spoilers to them, so forgive me this violence I am about to inflict, and please enjoy the programming.
And without further ado, let's begin.
Greetings, I am Wax's Poetic in a sea of exceptionally well-drawn faces. Or you could just call me Jacob.
My name is Sam.
And Jay here.
And welcome to the OverMangaCast, where Jacob's intro should tip off that this week we did something a little different. Instead of reading a manga, we read a webcomic. We read Kill 6 Billion Demons. This was my suggestion, so... you already know my background with this is I read it every time it updates. I love this comic. I got into it when I first got into the role-playing game Exalted, and the Exalted community loves this for reasons that are obvious.
Not shocking. And in fact, one of my questions, Mr. Expert, which inspired which? Because like the actual content is different, but the aesthetic is identical.
Exalted is older than Kill 6
Billion.
So yeah,
that basically answers the question.
Yeah, so I am a regular reader of this, and this is also like my fourth reread, so I'm very familiar. How about you, Jake?
I knew this because Sam has never not recommended this to me. And it's one of those things that I've always meant to get around to, but never have. And I knew at least a couple of the like splash pages and whatnot, because those have been sent to me pretty regularly. But I didn't really know anything about it in particular until I actually sat down for this read through.
All right. How about you, Matt?
So Kill 6 Billion Demons is a name I've been familiar with because it always pops up on like recommended list of what webcomics are actually good. And when I went into this, I went in with the assumption that I had never gotten around to reading it. I realized I was mistaken because I recognized a good first third of this, leading me to believe I did start reading this and gave up within the first 3 chapters, which makes a lot of sense. This is the first time I have made it to the end of book 1.
And how about you, Jay?
Never heard about this before, first time reading, and I significantly regret that decision.
Oh, come on. Well, why?
It's kind of like those assigned reading assignments you would get in high school or middle school, and you're wondering why this was assigned. And as soon as you start it, you're like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm able to put together some, underlying themes. And then you just kind of get, while you're trying to stick to the main plot, there's a whole lot of other extraneous things that are going on, which similarly draw you in. And for some individuals, they might enjoy that. I find it overstimulating, and I had to frequently put this down because it was just too much. I almost felt like I was being assaulted with plot.
Yeah.
And when I pick it up and I'm a new reader to this, I don't like that.
I think I summarized what my experience reading this was a session of Bible study while an acid trip goes on in the background. And I think a shonen protagonist is starting their story somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, overstimulating, I think, is a very good way of describing this webcomic. Because it only takes the first 3 pages of our main character, Allison, trying to get it on with her boyfriend, Zaid, for the crazy crap to start happening when a giant man in strange metal armor with a glowing halo appears behind them.
Yeah.
And it only goes wilder from there.
I mean, that piqued my interest, but it's just like, I feel like there was just so much going on in the background that detracted from that. I found myself angry, like Allison, of like, why the hell are we talking about all this bullshit? I don't care. Like, I had to look at your outline to realize that this was actually relevant because I just found myself so angry for all this other extraneous bullshit for being explained to me.
And that actually gets into some of the stuff that I noted, because like it is an exceptionally dense series, not just in terms of like the things said in the plot lines and the like sort of intellectual content of it. It's also extremely visually dense. And while there are a lot of places where it is absolutely gorgeous, nothing in the background isn't heavily detailed, which can make it hard to figure out what you're supposed to pay attention to.
Exactly.
Because it's like, you know, I actually enjoyed it and I could follow it, but I could understand why someone could be turned away from this because it is just so dense. And my one critique of it is that, like, in terms of visual density, as cool as it is that all the backgrounds, if it's not a splash page, you don't have to finely detail every background character because it makes it hard to tell who is actually a character and who isn't. There's a reason why it's done the way it's done basically everywhere else. And when it comes to the like intellectual content side of it, something that I kind of wished had happened like early on, like around the time, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but like around the time Allison gets into the like really trippy stuff, I kind of wish there was a character to translate. So it's like you get the character waxing poetic and giving you the Bible study, and then you have another character who's like more experienced with the world than Allison, but also a normie thrust into this world to say, oh, here's the part you need to pay attention to, just so that new readers don't get overwhelmed with information out the gate.
We do, in a sense, get that, but I agree with and I love this freaking comic, but I do agree with the criticism that it slaps you in the face way too hard at the beginning with its world. We do sort of get that, you know, that person who is a bit more down to earth later on. Unfortunately, she appears after we have already gotten our first huge exposition dump in the face.
Yeah, and you know, we'll get to that character, but like I kind of wish that there was another human there, basically. Yeah. Like another human who had like slipped into that world and had been there for like 9 to 15 months or something like that, some kind of range like that, where they know enough to say, oh, that's important. Pay attention to this, pay attention to that, but still being someone that's, is surprised by the craziness, sort of like a bridge between the mundane world and the crazy world. Because as we said, like the crazy happens almost immediately. It's sort of funny when I actually got to the webcomic. It's a webcomic, so you can, you find it online. I thought I had gotten to the wrong place because the first several pages are a really, really mundane, like scene movie. And I'm like, is this the right it says kill 6 billion demons, but is this the right thing?
You are in the right place. It is Allison, extremely timid college girl, trying to get it on for the first time with her creeper boyfriend who's a bit too forward. And then
that's sort of interesting because her friends say that about him.
She says that about him too.
Yeah.
But from the only scene we get to see Zayd, he's not being weird.
Yeah, it's like it's the situation where when her friends start saying it later too, it's sort of like a retroactively informed character trait. It kind of makes me interested to see what their relationship was actually like, because her friends don't exactly seem like the best people either.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about her friends when we get to after so much craziness.
after the acid trip.
Because as I alluded, they are in bed for 3 pages before a man in weird armor bleeding from multiple wounds, appears behind them, holds up a shiny thing, says, "King," and then the wall explodes, and the man in the armor gets instantly beheaded by a whole bunch of shiny people riding on weird dog monsters.
I've also seen that van.
Yes, it does look like something that would be on the side of a van, now that you say it.
It is. And like, this is obviously the intention, because like, you're supposed to be in Allison's shoes of like, you know, what the bleep is going on here? I am so confused. It's very disorienting. And this is, and like, you know, like, it's when it's doing that with intention, it's really good. It's just,
It asks for a lot of investment.
And I mean, like, I'm invested, but you know, it's one of those ones where if you do start reading and you're like, this is way too dense, it's not for me, it probably isn't for you.
Yeah.
But
And another thing, I think the fact that it's a webcomic probably adds to its benefit, because the average reader is not expected to read the entirety of book 1 in 1 week. They're expected to get one page updated weekly?
Every now and again, yeah.
Weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. It all depends.
So in that case, I can see why they would prefer, if you're getting 1 page a week, you want that to be a dense page.
Yeah, they need to hook you really hard. So actually, that's sort of interesting. That's the case where, because of the unique aspect of the webcomic medium, the reason it's so front-loaded is because when there was only a couple of pages of Kill 6 Billion Demons, it needed to hook you like that.
Yeah, and we get the hook of Zaid being snatched up by these spiky men and riding off into the void, and the headless body shoving the weird glowy thing into Allison's forehead.
Yep.
It's a shame that this is a visual, or that this is an audio medium, because the art in this comic is out of this freaking world. I love it. The splash page of the key being shoved into Allison's head is...
It's sort of funny because, like, going back to something I mentioned before, the only complaint I could possibly make about the art is that at times it's too good because it's too detailed, which, I mean, that's sort of a compliment onto itself.
But this is the beginning of Allison's adventure, as the power of the artifact inserted into her head shunts her into the void between worlds, only to crash down in the Red City of Throne, which is the spoke at the center of the multiverse, and basically heaven.
Well, it used to be.
It did used to be.
It's not that anymore.
And Allison arrives, sees the wide variety of crazy designs. I don't even know what to describe most of these things. There's a guy whose head is 2 pillars with a black ball in between them. I don't know, what would you even call that? And Allison, quite naturally, freaks the hell out at awakening in this place. At which point we get an abrupt perspective change.
Yeah, we switch over to a character who's got an exalted character name.
Yeah, 82 White Chain, born in emptiness, returns to subdue.
Even the exalted player can't get through all of it.
I don't know White Chain's entire name. I'm sorry, but they're White Chain. That is their name, and they are an angel.
And this is actually specifically the character I wish there was a translator for, because, again, the situation where like reading it all in a week is, you know, a bit rough. Like, he does not skip any like, he's the one, you know, quoting Bible verses at you,
sometimes literally.
And just having someone to say, okay, those 3 paragraphs, let me highlight the sentences that you care about for you. And like, almost in the sense of, you have Allison, who is freaking out who is rightly and understandably freaking out at all the weirdness. You have an object of the weirdness who is, persecuting some of the weirdness over here, trying to explain the situation, having someone to even just having the character be like a not just like a highlighter, but specifically a comic relief character to point out that, yes, this is as absurd as it looks, just sort of to ground it in a sort of more understandable perspective.
That would have helped immensely, Jacob.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for this entire time, and possibly if I had that, I probably would have retained more about what was shouted at me, because there was just so much to filter. And I honestly this is my own doing. I just could not process everything that was thrown at me. And at that point, I was so angry to get through it that it just seemed like nonsense to me. And I was like, there were times I was like completely
you start skimming
and getting rid of the dialogue, because I'm like, this shit doesn't make any sense. No one's explaining anything. It was very much a rage read for me.
Yeah, I don't know, because I understand why it was written the way it is. It's because you're on Allison's side, and you are thrown into this weird world where the only person who is talking to you is someone who is quoting scripture at you and never really answering any of your questions. Like, in dialogue, yes, her questions will be answered, but it's very much, no, you're coming with me. I know better than you.
It doesn't address the content of her question.
She's being treated like a child the entire time she's here. And that gives great catharsis to me when I got to the part where Allison was fed up with it, because I was also fed up with it by the time this was going on. Because so much of chapter 2, I think chapter 2 is entirely just 82 chains monologuing.
Yeah.
Just explaining the history of this particular multiverse.
Explaining, though, is weird, because explicitly when Allison then goes, I've got a qualifying question about what you just explained, and she says, like, well, it's all relative, and you can't really define what I just said. What? That's just a story?
It's the best story we have about how the universe works. White Chain is an angel, making them a peacekeeper, not a lawman, a peacekeeper. Very important difference. Currently in the midst of dealing with a crime boss, Preem Vash, the whoremonger.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a very delightful exchange. I do like Preem Vash. He's a very fun to hate villain, because he's just this snobby little gremlin.
See, that's sort of the problem that I mentioned with the background characters being so dense, because I remember Preem Vash, but like there's so many characters that are like that. It's hard to because the three of us who've only gotten as far as the first book, we don't know he comes back.
I think I referenced that on the Twitter. I posted my favorite character from this section, and I'm just like, I have no idea if this person's anything other than set dressing, but I like them.
Oh yeah, Ingsveld.
Yeah.
the man whose head is a book.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. He's also the Haberdashers Guild. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Ingsveld does come back.
Oh,
just
good.
So you know. Yeah, Preem Vash is just this delightful to hate little gremlin who has this wonderful exchange with White Chain. It's like, first you walk in here, and then you bust up my favorite guard. He was attempting to kill me. It was highly unwise. His brother will be furious. You ordered him to kill me. An old man gets nervous.
I like that.
Now, do you take bribes? Just cutting straight to the chase on that.
I'm just a legitimate businessman. I know for a fact you're not. Well, then do you take bribes?
And Allison, in the midst of her freakout, has lost her balance and fell down some stairs, plummets into the scene, giving White Chain the opportunity to speak their prayer of forgiveness for the violence that they are about to inflict, and just goes full Bruce Lee on all of Vash's minions.
I think she even, again, it's hard to notice the finer details, but I think she even actually ends up saving him from an ambush. Like he mentions that like he hadn't noticed the guy coming up behind him. And Allison like slams into them, and that's when he turns around and okay, we're fighting now.
Yeah. I mean, knowing the power of an angel, even an ambush would be very difficult to actually put an angel down that quickly. But
yeah,
the liturgy, which is the bits of setting detail at the bottom of every page. And Matt, I know you got the physical version. I don't know how much of the liturgy is on there.
Absolutely none. So I assumed it wasn't crucial, but apparently it is. Sam, feel free to cut this, but I also want to make this known. I do not recommend buying the physical copy of this because it does not include the liturgy at the end of every page. It does not include lots of things. And also, this is a very bright and vibrant comic. The print quality on this, I had to double check some scenes on the website because like these big open scenes with like all these like intricate color details just gets washed out in the printed version.
Ouch. That sucks.
So pirate it.
There you go. Yeah.
Sam, cut it.
But yeah, where were we? Yeah, one of the liturgy basically describes angels as nuclear explosions inside granite shells. So fighting one of them is a bad idea. But that didn't stop the stupid criminals.
Yeah, that is one of the things that does in what we read get made abundantly clear later.
So Allison passes out because who wouldn't at this point?
Yeah.
And awakens to White Chain, who has recognized the thing shoved in her forehead. He calls it the Magnus Gate, otherwise known as one of the Keys of Kings, which leads White Chain to believe that Allison is this mega badass that can crack planets in half. She has no idea what this is. As far as she's aware, it's a nightlight in her forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Which the audience is very much in the same position of. Mm-hmm. I like the comment that he makes about like I am sure your power is far greater than mine, but
I will still attempt to kick your ass.
Yeah.
Because White Chain is super adversarial, thinking that Allison is this godling, but she just
wants to know what's going on.
She puts it quite succinctly. I'm exhausted. My face is on fire. I'm pretty sure you've seen me naked. You're a person made of stone and who's lecturing me in a different language, which I somehow understand. What the beep is going on?
At which point she tries to throw a coffee pot at him.
Am I dead? Perhaps we will just take the coffee. Which does lead into our first glorious splash page of Throne, the Red City.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this is where it just goes full on exposition. I do understand. I feel for you guys. When I first read this, I was just as freaking confused. I continued to go along with it because it is my jam in that regard, but this is the kind of the part where it either makes or breaks for some people.
Well, I think it's good that they did that early, though, because just from the fact that there are entire Bible verses for every page of this written out, this is clearly a series written for people who love dense lore. Mm-hmm. And you want people to know, hey, my series has some dense lore right up front. You don't surprise people with that.
Yeah, because you get people invested in a group of characters, and then it's like, well, here's the other required reading.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna tick some people off. So yeah, and the thing is, I could follow like the cosmology of it. I was trying to like read it very closely and be like, okay, let me make note of every single detail. It very quickly got to the point where I realized that's a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, I
skim it, and if you skim it, you can follow everything. And again, like having a character who's like that skimming, like to skim it for you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Jacob, I was in the exact same boat where I was reading this like very detailed, and I got through all of like Yishin's several different forms that committed divine suicide and split into two parts that mated for 7 days and birthed, or 7 hours, and birthed all the godlings.
And fought for 7 years, yes.
Yeah. And like I got to the end of that, and then I got to 82 White Chains saying, Allison asks, wow, was that important? 82 White Chains. Maybe? And I was just like, oh, cool. The story doesn't care that deeply about its deep lore.
So God is real? Yeah, probably. And I mean, that is kind of the point. One of the big themes of this comic is, one of Yi Sun's lessons is let there be no genesis, for I hate beginnings and I am a consummate liar. There is no definitive ultimate truth, because the idea is supposed to be that each perspective is its own truth and each one is just as important. Again, that's something that you got to do quite a bit of deep reading to get to.
Yeah, that's not something that came across in what we had read.
Nope.
But the idea is there was the first god, or the first being, Yi Sun, who knew everything and had no one to talk to, which was super boring. So they split themselves in two. One being that was everything that was, and the other that was everything that wasn't. And they were both so repulsed by each other, they fought, and then they boned, and they made 777,777 more gods through this.
That made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those gods hung out for a while, then stood in a big circle, pointed out into the void, and said, let there be something that way. And that's how we got the multitude of the universe. And then all those gods died.
Yeah, that's the extent of the lore that I got. I'm like, okay.
Yep.
And then after that, I just kind of like fell off, and I'm just like, I'm done caring about this.
And okay, so I followed it through to the end conclusion of that, as is my understanding, and Lore Master over there can correct me if I'm wrong about something.
Hello.
When, the single being started splitting itself into pieces, it was no longer everything, and that made it finite. And so that's, how the gods die. And eventually in these, 700,000 some odd, 7 is an arc number, obviously, universes, the mortals of those universes grew powerful enough to like find the realm of the gods, seeking to meet their gods. But there was nothing, because the gods had already died by that point. And mortals do what mortals do in that case: free real estate. So they became the new gods, but they are finite as well. And also, being mortals, they wanted things, and want became greed, and they started killing each other over stuff. And then bad things happened.
Yep, that's how we got the 7 demiurges.
Because they're at the center of the right?
Yeah, they're at the center of the multiverse.
But is that explaining why Throne has become so bad? Because I thought that was because they were receiving all of the resources from all of the different multiverses.
It's part of why Throne became so bad. Because y'all remember from the Yu-Gi-Oh episode how we said that Domino City's the worst place ever to live? Throne is that times like a million.
Yeah.
The reason Throne is such a crap pile to live in is because the demiurges stopped ruling with wisdom and they ruled with power instead. And all they wanted was to just have more. They didn't really care about controlling it. They just wanted more. And so the divine order was allowed to dissolve, and it's just become this chaotic, crime-ridden mess.
Because nobody's actually in charge.
Yeah, and even the angels are like, we can't
do anything about this because nobody is paying attention.
And only a few rules following nerds like White Chain actually still care about it.
And the other thing that is something that I picked up on that I think is important relative to this: Throne was originally heaven. Now most people call it hell because, beings from the void that, do bad nonsense.
The devils, yes.
The demons have been moving in because nobody's been kicking them out. And demons make deals with mortals to grow more powerful. And they've basically taken up residence because the people who should be in charge, most of the people who should be in charge ended up killing each other. We've only got a couple left, and they don't get along anyway. It's basically just an armistice because they knew no one was going to win if they fought it out to the end. And that's the reason why Throne is so terrible.
Yeah, that portion of it gets explained when we meet our next character, who, Jacob, she should be your favorite character. Cocacola.
What?
The little blue one.
Yeah,
Devil?
the little blue devil. Cocacola. If you say her name properly, a magical name appears.
What?
Cocacola. Her name is the phonetic spelling of Coca-Cola.
Ha. That's why she's a devil.
Blue devils are the weakest. Yes, because White Chain eventually realizes, wait a minute, this girl did not get this key on purpose. She somehow lucked into this. And these
I don't think
keys
luck is the right word.
Yeah. These keys are what make the demiurges such tremendous badasses, because each of them is a fragment of the song of creation. And basically, it's a portion of the power of the original god. And there are 7 of these keys possessed by each one of the demiurges. And that's why there's a balance of power. And White Chain thinks that, wait, if one of the keys is here, that means one of the demiurges doesn't have them. And the other 6 are going to start getting rowdy in this point, and we're going to have another multiversal war, and everything's going to die. This is bad. We need to figure out which one of the demiurges lost their key and go give it back. What White Chain doesn't know is that this is the master key, and it's actually the 8th one.
I don't think we knew that.
I don't think we knew that.
Nope.
Well, I mean, it's implied because Allison has the key that Zos gave her. He's the dude. He's the dude in the armor. And then we see the concordance of the 7 demiurges.
Oh, I didn't realize guy who personally sat on the throne of creation wasn't one of the demiurges.
Right.
But yeah, that actually does make sense with when I think it's when she's leaving, she speaks with like his spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's the case where it's like,
yeah, Zos has a tendency to just show up towards the end of one of the books and spout some nonsense, and I love him. He's great. he shows up to say something vaguely inspirational and critical to the lore of the universe, and then leaves again. And I love him.
But that's after we talk to Coca-Cola, who, now that I know her name, amazing. But she was my favorite character because she popped in and was almost what Jacob was talking about earlier, someone who explains what's necessary, because she, at the very least, doesn't care about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And just wants to answer people's questions and is taking pity on Allison because she's like, wow, you've gotten yourself into some trouble, and that angel is not listening to anything you say.
Mm-hmm. Well, we meet Co when at Hell 72, which is a slavers guild inside one of the corpses of the dead gods.
Because like most of the city is made up of the
bodies of the dead gods.
Yeah.
It's run by Preem Nand, a gold devil, which means he is a real hardcore SOB, and he is the head of the slave guild. White Chain promises to give over Allison as a slave in exchange for meeting with Nand's secretary. At which point we kind of learn that Nand must be kind of an idiot because White Chain's vessel cracks. Angels can lie, but if they do, they suffer physical damage. So when White Chain made that promise that
he was clearly not paying enough attention to notice that the vessel cracked, or didn't know that about angels.
Mm-hmm. So Nand sends them to meet Co with a couple of
the creepy mannequin things.
Yeah, the mannequin devils that White Chain promptly blasts the hell out of.
The mannequin devils that are wrapped in human skin.
Yeah,
it's the only other time humans are mentioned by species, and it's these 2 bodies are wrapped in human skin.
Well, no, we also get a mention of a human because one of the people in Hell 72 is a human woman sitting there eating some noodles.
Oh, I did not even know she was human.
Allison as much says so, goes up to her and is like, wait a minute, you're human too. And this lady, Maya, topple the gods or murder the gods and topple their thrones. That's her last name.
We definitely did not get her name, or at the very least, I didn't retain it if we did.
Or I didn't recognize that was a name for a human being, which is much more fair.
Yes.
That's also possible.
She is Auntie Maya. That is all you need to know.
Gotcha.
I think the name Auntie Maya did come up.
Yes, it did.
She turns to Allison and she goes, "Tell me, girl, what do you think of death?" And Allison's like, "What?" And then just gets dragged away by White Shane. So we never get an answer to that. And then Maya's just like, whatever, and goes back to eating her noodles.
That's actually an excellent example of the issue with having all of the characters in the backgrounds be detailed, because I never would have guessed that that was a major character. She just seems like she's there as like part of the flavor of the locale.
Yeah, because Hell 72 is where we get another one of those big splash pages.
Yeah, like nothing about how she appeared in the story made her seem any more important than the 7 people who died immediately when the ballroom blitz happens shortly after the scene we're talking about.
Yeah.
I get like the only indication that she is in any way more important than the characters that die is that she killed some of them.
Well, we'll get to the ballroom blitz in a minute because we meet with CO.
This is actually something I want to mention about CO, because this is the character I mentioned later that she does function similar in that role, but my problem with her in that role, because like her attitude is exactly what I'd want in the explanation character, for lack of a better way of putting it.
She does at one point just cut off White Shane going, "Boring!"
Yeah.
Yep.
So like the attitude is exactly what I'd want in that character, but the problem is she has a vocal tic, which means it can be sometimes hard to understand what the hell she's saying too, which just compounds the problem.
She talks in the black speech, yeah. That blasted poxily vacuous gaperly horsin.
I do like that they have translations. like that's no. Like that I enjoyed very much. Like the
my favorite COism to use is to call stupid people the wobble brains. Yeah, CO being a devil is concerned only with power and gaining more power for herself. At least that's how she appears starting off early, because the only part of the story of the universe she's concerned about is the demiurges going on a multiversal war to claim territory and myrtleize the crap out of one another.
Mm-hmm.
That is, and like she is one of the most like, because like it really, just from the perspective of what we read and not knowing what comes forward, there really only seemed to be 3 meaningful characters: White Shane, Allison, and CO. And CO stands out so much because she does have that sort of like the immediate impression you get is that, oh, this is just some, random demon. But she immediately takes pity on Allison for her situation. And you kind of get the impression it's because CO's kind of in the same position she is. It's just CO, like, born and raised in this world, has some idea of what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, she's a blue mask devil, which means she's the weakest of them.
But like the idea that she's been dragged along through all of this shenaniganery as well, like she understands the position Allison is in.
You're closer than you think. Yeah, CO, like all joking aside, CO is absolutely my favorite character in the comic to this day. So she's a lot of fun. But yeah, as Matt mentioned, there is the ballroom blitz as great violence is unleashed because Preem Vash decided that he wanted Allison and shows up with another angel. I don't even try to remember this angel's name. All I know is that they go by Delicious.
Nice.
I didn't even get that much.
That's the pink one.
I would have referred to them as the pink one.
Yeah, they've got the cool like feather boa around their collar that I thought was a really good design choice.
Yeah, we get introduced to this character by White Chains is in the middle of one of his sermons when suddenly there is a hole in his face and there's a needle sticking through it, and he just kind of stops.
Well, CO is kind of boned at this point because she cannot fight off an angel. And so Allison just kind of gets picked up and dragged away. Mm-hmm. And it's at this point that we know
treated as a because it's like, talking about like things in relative to like human as a species. She's not treated as a person.
Mm-hmm. Well,
no, she's treated as flesh.
Yeah, I was about to say they're in a district that trades flesh as a commodity.
Like when she first arrived, they were talking about like
if she was here for like a drop off or something.
That was something that was kind of glossed over of like, this is a flesh trading city, and constantly there are people who are like looking at her, like wondering, does she belong to someone or is she up for sale?
Hey, Angel, are you selling that one? No.
You know, like the thing is, White Chain doesn't really treat her like a person either.
Yeah.
You know, for all of his waxing poetic about, like, to be fair, he doesn't. He's not saying like he doesn't frame himself as the good guy or anything like that. But like, you know, the sort of like cold and calculating approach to these are the rules and I shall enforce them onto violence.
So
He doesn't really treat her like a person either.
I don't think they frame themselves as the good guy for like any. I don't think they ever say the words, I am like a bastion of holiness. I think how they frame everything they speak about, though, that's the obvious conclusion that they think of themselves like that.
Yeah.
White Chain is here to keep the peace, and they see that as the righteous order of the universe. So
it's a humble brag, really. It's, oh, I'm so good, I don't even mention it. Also, listen to me, insolent girl. You don't know what you're doing. I know best. There's a constant theme of I know best to the detriment of treating her like a person, which is why what happens in the ballroom blitz is so cathartic.
Yeah, because all of the other guilds have learned about this girl with something cool in her forehead. They're not exactly sure what, but they know that it's something cool and they really want it.
I thought the little imp thing did actually say what it was.
Yeah, there's the little demon they find on the bus.
Yeah, well, they all the guilds show up, and that's when number one, the Red Masked Devil. I did have to find his name as well because he only shows up for this.
See, that's the thing. He could have been a character. I thought he was going to come
back. But yes, number one is like a key. She has the girl has a key in her forehead, a key of kings, and all the guilds immediately go, "Oh, we were just here to get like a new slave, key of kings. Hell yeah!" And that's when we get the bit that Matt talked about earlier with the slew of characters showing up ready to beat ass, take names, and take the key.
We literally get like introduction panels of 3 characters who then, when the fight starts, are immediately one shot.
And like one of the things I like, and like again, this is the case where it's like, wow, the art is so good. I love the splash page, and I actually seen this before because there's a character, like there's an old man with like a concerned look on his face that like I love that. It's so fun to meme with that.
My favorite is the giant golden baby.
But like there's a bunch of like insert shots of all these characters looking at like 2 of the combatants about to stand off. You can find where they actually are in the crowd, and they're as detailed in the smaller, in the
smaller scale zoom out shot. Yeah.
They're just as detailed as the insert shot. And like, yes, go crazy on the art there. Maybe don't have number one be as like crazy detailed as he is.
You need to know he has 3 packs of smokes taped to him at all times, each intricately detailed with a different brand. That's important.
But glorious violence does erupt in Hell 72 as everyone wants Allison, and she is kind of lost in the scrum at this point and just finds a sword and picks it up, and she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. At which point, we get my favorite running gag in the comic. CO, I can't believe I'm helping you right now. Riding out of the sky on White Chain's deactivated shell to crash into the fight and save Allison.
Though one interesting detail that I took note of that just because it comes up by the time we're, at the end of what we read, one interesting detail I liked, she picks up a Zweihander. Mm-hmm. And like, this isn't some like toy or something. It's a literal actual Zweihander. Mm-hmm. Those things are insanely heavy. And she picks it up and she's holding it. And like, she doesn't know how to hold it. She doesn't know how to hold a sword. She's some college girl who has no idea what's going on, but she picks it up and she's holding it like it's nothing. And she even notes that like, wait, how am I doing that?
Yeah. Her splash in the big splash panel where everyone has a little introduction thing. She is Allison W. Ruth, barista. Yeah. That's part of the power of the key. It gives her basically Charles Atlas superpower, and she can just heft up that sword no problem, even though she has no idea how. Sio's like, all right, I'll hold them off. You pluck the needle out of the angel's head, and the angel will actually get us out of here.
And can I just say, I loved Sio's whole rhyming couplet combined with using paper dolls power. I just love that anytime it shows up in fiction, and I thought it was really good here.
My paper soldiers form a wall 5 paces thick and twice as tall.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pay close attention on the next panel, Sio actually like plucks those words out of her speech bubble and like sews them into the paper dolls to make them come to life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't notice that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool like 5 panels, because at the end of that, she's also, after summoning all of these things in her former employer's home, is just going, by the way, I quit. And I mean, I can relate though, because have you ever like gone in and given that letter of resignation? She just got to do it with magic paper dolls.
Yeah,
feels great.
But the best part is, Allison like is a little squeamish about plucking out the needle. Sio starts berating her about it for being such a little weakling, and then you know what? F it. And she pulls out the needle. White Chain immediately stands up, sees the chaos, goes, "What did you do? I was gone for 5 minutes."
And like you can kind of, it's sort of the interesting thing, because it was at that point where Sio started saying stuff like that I noticed Allison hasn't done anything. She's just kind of there.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the point where like, and like this was obviously done with intentionality. So it's not like the author just realized, but like Sio realized it. Suddenly Allison's realized it. Suddenly all the other characters have realized that she's not a set piece. She's not a bag of money.
Which was a bit of a shock for me, because I'm used to the current state, and not even just the current state, but like the next book after this, where Allison is a much more active protagonist.
I was going to say, this doesn't feel like book 1. It feels like a prologue.
Yeah.
Because it really does feel like the story starts where Allison makes the decision to go back, which we'll get into in a bit. But like, it's also the situation where you can totally understand where Allison's coming from, because like, how can you possibly be prepared for this level of insanity? So you really feel for, the position that she's in.
Like, this was the turning point for me, honestly, was this scene where 82 wakes up. And she immediately blames everyone else for what went on. They yell at Allison, tell Allison to just get in line, and Allison just goes, "Wait, no. First of all, I have a name. Don't call me girl, and I'm not going with you.
I have a fucking name." She's hefting up the sword like she's really about to fight White Chain, which, I mean, good on you, kid.
Conveniently, White Chain immediately gets bombarded by
the other angel, the pink one,
Joker.
They engage in a sick ass kung fu fight, and Sio's like, "Okay, yep, nope, this is the part where we go."
And like, it's sort of interesting because this is another case where Allison's getting pulled along, but like, it's what she wants. Someone actually listened to her at this point, Like, Sio is so, I shouldn't say immediately endearing, but Sio is so endearing at this point because she's the only one who has listened to a word that Allison has said up to this point,
And she's actually trying to help Allison. She's a weird pseudo mentor character.
Yeah, and this sort of goes into what I was saying about like Sio shows herself as not just another, demon, because she is showing genuine empathy here. She very obviously feels for the ridiculous situation that Allison has gotten herself into, and is just going to do her a solid because,
yeah, let's go.
She needs the help.
And it's a good thing that they left when they did, because Delicious and White Chain fight each other to a standstill. And Preem Nand comes in and says, "Not in my house," and shoots eye lasers and breath weapon over the entire battlefield, burning people away.
killing all those main characters we got introduced into in Splash Panels.
Actually, if you do note, a lot of the ones that we were introduced to did survive, and they do come back later because it kind of becomes a running thing of the bunch of mooks in Hell 72 that wanted to get Allison and get the key. Don't give up on that.
Oh, nice. So they're Team Rocket.
They become known as the followers because they, or as Auntie Maya calls them, the parade of fools.
See, what I thought you were going to say is that it's a running gag in Kill 6 Billion Demons where they introduce like 15 characters and about 5 of them die like right after they're introduced. And so it's like, pick out the actual main character.
I mean, that too. Abbadon is on record saying, I think my webcomic holds the record of the most uniquely designed characters to die one panel later.
I'd believe it.
And it's at this point that we also learn that Auntie Maya is important because the chaos has settled down. She had apparently been protecting the noodle vendor and just, sitting there eating her noodles. And because nobody was paying attention, she ate everything else as well. Because she's a mendicant knight. She's a beggar. She's going to take what she can get. And she does offer to pay in a proverb. If you happen to find God on the road, kill him. She stands up, thanks the noodle vendor for the noodles, walks away. The noodle vendor scratches his head, looks around, and notices there is a perfectly clean space about a 5-foot radius around her, and a whole bunch of score marks in the ground and bisected bodies.
There is a perfect circle of nothing happened except everybody else got up and left, and then carnage on the edge of that circle.
So I don't think I picked up on that being anything to do with her.
Yeah, no. She did that.
It just looked like the noodle vendor then went out to look at all the dead bodies in front of his stall. It was like, oh, man.
You do not fuck with Auntie Maya Tenmedi. Murder the gods and topple their thrones.
But I think we skipped over what happened to Coco and Allison. Coca-Cola, there, revealed that not only is the key in Allison's head a powerful weapon, it also is a key to the warp gates, basically, that allow you to transport instantly across the multiverse, which they reactivate one, and Allison is kicked in before she is even fully explained what's going on. And
Theo just shoves her off a ledge, and Allison tumbles out of sight going, well, wait, this will send me home, but what about my boyfriend?
Boyfriend?
Yeah, Theo, wait, what boyfriend? I love how disgusted Theo looks at that, too.
Straight.
Straight in my webcomic?
Things explored later.
Okay, so like the other thing is like her getting there was an acid trip of like her stepping, not metaphorically, her literally stepping out of her skin and being like this shadow thing. Mm-hmm. This is the part where she speaks with the previous holder of the key thing, right?
Yeah, of the key. Well, actually, hold on. Question. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this for Jay, but did you guys happen to read the little 3-page short story that came between Allison leaving and the next part?
For me, this is sort of funny. I was running out of time for reading the whole thing.
All right.
And I saw the first image. I'm like, okay, it's just an in-between like cover page. Went to the next one. Wait, this is the same. Went to the third one, scrolled down and saw there was this wall of text. And the thing is, I'm a really slow reader. I always have been. I had an eye problem when I was younger. And I'm like, if I try, I'm never finishing this. And I want to finish this.
Asma, yeah.
Sam, I just checked mine. My physical copy does not have it.
Darn it. Asma and the Three Masters and the Lessons She Failed to Learn is my favorite of the side stories. Because it's about this horrible little gremlin running around pissing in Cheerios.
I've got a sword manual. That's cool, right?
Oh yeah, Medi's sword manual.
Didn't read it, but it's there.
I love the first precept in Medi's sword manual, which is she tells you to do a whole bunch of wax on, wax off stuff. And by the end, it's like, and by this point, you should have built a house, know how to care for it and feed yourself. And you don't need to learn the sword because it is an ugly tool fit only for separating men from their vital fluids.
I think I actually read the last one.
And its adherents are idiots, which is something to say because Medi is unambiguously the most powerful sword wielder in the entire canon. That includes the mythology.
Oh wow.
She fought 10,000 men buck naked and won.
Yeah.
As you do.
But that is all background material. It is at this point, yes, Jake, as you said, that Allison returns to the void where she and Zos have a conversation. Zos being the original conquering king, the one who kicked in the door of heaven, was like, hey, God, what's up? Oh, God's dead.
Well, I'm God now.
Fine, this is my house.
That was another case where it's like, I go, oh, okay, now I get what's going on. Because this is before we're introduced to the 7 demiurges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I sort of picked up on what was going on at that point, between that and like the demiurge scene confirmed it, where it's like, oh, they're fighting over, the top spot, and Allison is this guy's last play to keep everything from turning back into disaster.
She is his successor. Yes.
Yeah. And of course she gets an exalted name too.
He names her Alice, kill 6 billion demons. That's not a quest. That's not something you need to do. That is her name.
That is your name. And like, my thought is like, well, okay, this name is definitely going to be prophetic, but that's going to be interesting to see how that works out, because they explicitly state that it's like 580 million souls inhabit the throne. And
then there's the rest of the multiverse.
So it's like, you're gonna kill 6, it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, your name is probably gonna be prophetic, but like, how fast do we make new demons for that to happen? Because not everything in Throne is demons.
I mean, seeing how quickly background characters are just eviscerated in this, probably pretty soon.
Yeah. Also, fun note here, is it can be either a prefix or a suffix, but it's usually part of the name of a god. And so fellow gods will leave the off as a sign of peerage. Zos sees Alice and so he just leaves off the and that's why he calls her Alice.
That's really clever. I like that. That was not in the part we read, but I like that.
Her name can also be read as Al Yis which, I thought was fun.
That makes a lot of sense. Sounds like if I'd done the reading for all the lore, that would have been really rewarding. But I didn't.
But yeah, they're sitting in the void. Allison is like, dude, this is all your fault. What the hell did you even do? I chose you as my successor. You're going to slay the 7-headed beast and correct my mistakes.
Okay.
She's like, why am I going to do that? I don't know. Fate said so.
You're about as convincing as all the other idiots.
Yeah.
Can I go home now?
Well, it is at this point that we get the concordance of the demiurges, where the 7 meet. Not all 7 of them are there, but we do see most of them for the first time.
And
only one of them show up.
Only one doesn't show up, right? Because there were 5 of them, and then
2 of them sent like attendants instead of themselves.
Yeah. The ones that are there, Incubus, Mammon, and Jagganoth didn't show up. Incubus and Mammon sent like attendants in their stead. Jagganoth just isn't there at all.
Gotcha.
The ones that are there were Modem, Jadis, Solomon David, and your pal Gogagog. Gogagog is the worm lady.
Oh, good.
Okay.
The one whose face kept shifting and changing. Modem is the tiny old wrinkly lady in the big orange clothes. Solomon David is the huge dude with the beard, and Jadis is the one in the cube.
So I know we keep bringing this up, but I think this was also, I fell victim to all the characters are incredibly detailed. That's probably why I thought only one of the characters was a sovereign. And because they'd been complaining about why did someone send attendants. I just assumed the rest of them sent attendants because the rest of them look very normal compared to the one big guy.
The narrative utility of this scene is allow us to introduce all of your shonen antagonists
Yep.
for the series.
And the neat thing is, we don't, each of them, it's seven. Seven's an arc number. They're specifically described as these evil emperors. Of course, each one of them is one of the deadly sins, but we do see bits and pieces of it, even though it's not really made apparent. Like, Modem is constantly eating, so Jadis is literally frozen in a cube and can't do much. So
the guy who comes late is definitely Wrath, because he is
a 30-foot tall.
he is walking angry.
Yes, he is walking angry.
That's sort of interesting, because like the instant that you mentioned that, I didn't make the connection to 7 evil emperors, 7 deadly sins. I didn't make that connection, but the instant you did, I started, because it's like there's the incubus. That's obviously lust.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes sense when it's pointed out to you, but I think by this point I'd already been like inundated with characters who were like all about being excesses of sin. I just took each of the individual clues as like
this is just
what
the way
the world is. So
the story is,
yeah.
One of my favorite moments is when they're trying to figure out who kidnapped Zaid, because your boy is just kind of floating there above the table in stasis.
I think, as is my understanding, they think he is actually the successor.
They do. They think he's the heir.
Yeah, okay.
But they're trying to figure out which one it is, and Gog is mocking each of the different demiurges in some way, accusing it of being them, and Modem just gets sick of it and goes, "Perish!" Gog's head explodes and then reforms into worms, going, "I was working on that face!" Gogger's in the chat, everybody.
No.
But yeah, no, Jagganoth does show up, and he accuses Modem of having sent the angels, the hit squad, which we find out did consist of angels who are following some anarchist philosophy called the Path of Thorns.
Was that mentioned in what? Because I'm not gonna lie,
that was mentioned in White Chain's exposition dump. Yeah.
Okay, that's one of those cases where.
And I'm not going to lie, that kind of gets dropped later on.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So my running theory that the story doesn't care about its own lore continues to be true.
That is one of the few things that gets dropped later on, I will say. Jagganoth has just crushed one of them in his grip and drops it on the table and is like, "Hey, Modem, why did these things come to my territory through yours?" Which is our hint that planet Earth exists in Modem's 7th of the universe.
Which, honestly, probably fitting.
And all of them are starting to argue over who sent these Thorn Knights, not knowing that none of them did. The Thorn Knights are just being assholes. When Jadis starts speaking the prophecy of the Successor.
And we get our title drop.
Mm-hmm. The prophecy of the Successor is that the conquering king pushed from his throne, or what. I don't remember the entire thing. What I do know is that the Successor will come flanked by a white flame and a black flame. So angels of the cold white fire and devils of the hot black fire.
Because that had been previously established in, I think,
that's the first exposition. It's about Yisun separates herself into the two.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And if you look on the giant cube that Jadis is in, there are little pictographs. And indeed, it does show White Chain and Seo around the vague figure of the Successor, which I had actually not noticed until this read through, and I thought that was super cool.
This is the kind of series that you want to read through multiple times, because it almost feels like, skipping ahead a little bit, definitely going to read more. I feel like I'm going to feel obligated to read the whole thing every time a new page comes out, because it's so dense. If that's what you're looking for, it is the literal densest thing I've ever seen. I'd argue there are cases where it goes too far with that. And not even because it's not even the exposition stuff. There are some cases where, as great as the kung fu fighting was, there were some cases where it was hard to follow what was going on the page because everything was so detailed.
Yeah.
That that was by far the exception. But like, my one complaint about Kill 6 Billion Demons is the density. It is a neutron star.
But the prophecy ends with, and his name will be Kill 6 billion demons.
Title drop.
And it shows Allison's, spirit standing there in the void. And interesting tidbit, right below the between the page and the liturgy on the actual website version of it, there is a piece of text that is the same color as the background, so you have to highlight it in order to see it. But if you highlight it and you follow it, I just put it in our Discord chat. You get this image of a very scarred person with a key in their head saying, "Don't wear it out," implying that is what Kill 6 billion demons will eventually look like. Is that Allison in the future? Is that Zaid? Is that both? I don't know.
So hold on. Not only do we have just the story by itself, which is incredibly dense, both dialogue wise and art wise, we have additional Bible verses for each page. And now we have secret hidden alternate text. I am so far out of my depth here. I feel like I had my summer reading assigned to me, and I thought I was just supposed to read the table of contents. I want everyone to be aware. Oh, Matt's probably just dumb. He just doesn't like dense, overly complicated things. No. I've read House of Leaves. I love House of Leaves. This is a different beast.
I lived with Matt for 3 years. I've known him for the better part of a decade. This isn't, I can assure you. And same with Jacob. I've known him for years. I can assure you, none of the people in this conversation are stupid and unable to read into things. This is just the nature of this comic, man.
Yeah.
I have got years of me reading this, which is why I know all this shit. Well, yeah, it's at this point that Allison returns to planet Earth. She wakes up in her bedroom in her sorority house. She's still got the sword.
Yeah. I like it. It's one of those cases where it's like as big a jerks as all of her friends can be at time. Like, I don't think it's fair to say that they're all awful people or anything, but they can be jerks at times. But like, snotty. I like that they're all like, "Hey, can we talk about this sword? Where did this sword come from?"
I want to talk about this. I think
because Allison was missing for 3 days.
Yeah, and they were concerned about her. I mean, they obviously think she went away with her boyfriend, which, given the situation, it's not an insane thing to think.
Yeah.
Like, and also, I don't think her friends are bad people. I think Allison is a very meek, quiet person who's a little neurotic, and they talk over. She lets people walk over her, and that's what happens. She's got her one best friend in the house that sticks up for her enough to get them to stop talking to her for a bit, which is what she needs to recoup. But then that really just motivates her to go like, wait, no, maybe I can't let Zaid, I think. I can't let Zaid die, even though he is a creep. And then everyone else, Zaid's a creep. Zaid is a creep. You were with him for 3 days. We didn't call the cops, but he is a creep. So I'm not sure what the level of like playful ribbing to Zaid is and how much he's just weird.
Yeah, I don't know either.
How much of it is just Allison doesn't think she can do better?
Yeah, who knows?
We don't get anything on Zaid, really, is what happens, despite the fact he is the motivating factor for her.
He is the MacGuffin.
He is the princess in the tower.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing we kind of neglected to mention earlier is the reason that Allison was able to understand the languages in Throne was that White Chain fed her blue devil liquor, because devils have the power of tongues. And to answer your question, it is liquor from a blue devil. It made Allison grow horns for a while. She puked up the devil. She lost the horns. And if she wanted to retain the universal translator powers, she needed to eat the blue devil.
Earlier on, one of the cases where, you know, people are just not respecting Allison as a person situation, she starts to notice bumps on her head and she's like, what is that? Because like I loved the panel where like she's drinking the coffee and he's talking, I've given you a universal translator, and she plucks the thing out of the out of her coffee cup, and the look on her face is just so like, yeah, I'd be there too. Oh, there are horns growing on your head. Don't worry, they'll fall off. Like, that's not an explanation.
That's not helpful. Allison, perhaps reasonably, has a bit of an identity crisis. She has had her eyes forcibly ripped open to see the immensity of her reality and how tiny she is in it. But she still kind of can't leave Zaid there.
Yeah, she has, and it is sort of the situation where it's like her friends are trying to be friends, but she needs the time to collect herself after the experience she just had.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, how do you comprehend such a thing?
You don't. Instead, you resolve to deal with the problem. You pick up your sword, you concentrate on the magic stone in your head, and you go back to into the friggin' madhouse,
into the acid trip.
I really like that part because that mirrors what we get with 82 Chains earlier on, because she's sitting there watching, I believe it's supposed to be like a Disney princess movie or something is the implication.
Yeah.
And like all her friends are there just talking over her, giving her advice she didn't ask for, and basically telling her how to live her life. And
which is a nicer version of what's been happening to her in the acid trip.
But basically what we get to hear from her best friend is who's kind of like a weird voice of reason, who's just like, yeah, I remember the girl who was a little chubby, really into Sailor Moon, but I guess we lost her after all the trips to the gym and the hair dye. And we get to cut back to Allison's bathroom, and you just notice like all the things she's done to like change herself. And she's had this like image crisis of who am I? And this is just another group of people telling her who she is. When she finally goes, wait, no, I want to go save my boyfriend. I'm not just going to stay here where it's safe.
Mm-hmm. And to some extent, I feel like the comments about Zaid's kind of a creep, because it's like, when she mentions that, it sounds like she's just parroting what her friend said. Does she really think that herself? The fact that everything is so vague about Zaid, I don't think Allison really knows who Zaid is because she's just been going through the motions. And like
she was very much going through the motions. At one point, she's looking at her phone, and you note that in her calendar, in like her calendar on her phone, she had scheduled getting it on with Zaid and losing, quote, her stupid virginity.
Yeah. And
she was very much a person going through the motions.
And like the surreal experience that she just had is the only real thing that she's done since like middle school.
Mm-hmm.
She just says, this is what I'm doing. There's nobody else in the scene. You know, it's like the one friend who's like closer to her than the others, gives her that, pep talk of,
I remember who you used to be.
I remember who you used to be. But like the thing that's sort of important is she goes to be alone to make a decision for herself. She says, I'm going to do this because it's what I want. I don't care if it's stupid. I don't care if it's crazy. I don't care if it's dangerous. It's my choice.
Mm-hmm.
And she, steps through the metaphorical gate. And it really does feel like that's the point. Like that moment is where the story really begins.
A true king is a wielder of names, unshaped by the world, but shaping it with their actions. That's in the next book.
Okay.
I really like Zoss's pep talks, all right?
Well, but then
I understood that.
We do get my favorite splash page, which is Allison teleporting into the middle of like a bar. Yeah, and it's just a whole bunch of crazy demons going like, who's ruining our good time? What's she doing? Because we've seen like depths of sin and depravity, But like the location she's in this splash panel is a bunch of like they're monsters, but they look like they're all like very casual and we're just hanging out. And now suddenly Allison is the weird thing interrupting their day.
Which, is a nice juxtaposition. I like that too.
Yeah, the hero's journey crossing the line into the unknown world sort of way. Actually, now that I mention that, the first book is almost a condensed hero's journey, except in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And, it also works as the crossing the threshold step in the hero's journey as well, which I like. I mean, if we've learned anything about Kill 6 Billion Demons, how dense it is, I could see them doing cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles of the hero's journey.
Gee, it's almost like the universe is shaped like a wheel.
It's a spiral of madness.
I love this comic so much. All right, but we have come to the end of book 1, Kill 6 Billion Demons. The next book is called Wielder of Names, so we can stop saying that freaking long-ass title. But that'll be for the future. We've come to the discussion segment. So, favorite character. My favorite character, as I have said, is C-O-C-A-C-O-L-A, Estrella von Maximus III, I think is the rest of her name, because the more names a devil has, the weaker they are. That's explained early in book. Yeah, the more names the devil has, the weaker they are.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's explained early in book 2. So you didn't need to know that, but I do love Co. She is for being a devil. She is one of the most human characters.
The most empathetic character, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And like, of course, I love her for things that happen later in the series, but even just for this book, she is such a grounding force that is really needed. And I love this comic, but even I was at the point of like, man, when is Allison going to do something? When is White Chain just going to shut the hell up? Oh, right. She never does that. Damn it. Oh, we didn't even get into the bit about White Chain's gender identity, but
that seemed like it was setting up for later, because that was mentioned a couple of times, but they didn't really elaborate on it meaningfully.
It was never really clarified, which I think is obvious because I don't think any of us have used the same pronouns for them.
Not even internally.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly masculine, and they don't want to be called female, but like that's very clearly, because this is one of those cases where, like if you're going into it and you're the type of person who wants to see a series set up things for later and then pay them off at some point in the future, because like I like that sort of thing.
Oh boy, does this thing about White Chain get paid off.
It's one of those cases where it's like, if you want something that's more straightforward, you're going to know very quickly that this is not the series for you.
But yeah, we were discussing favorite characters.
Right.
Jake, what was yours?
Honestly, Allison. Like she becomes the kind of shonen pro tag I love. She like obviously doesn't necessarily know how to fight yet, but like she's competent, confident. Because she doesn't do anything at first, I almost didn't feel like she was a character, but that's sort of the point of the way the story treats her. And I really liked seeing her, even though she's not physically done anything yet, she's already come into her own, and you kind of know she's gonna make it. She's gonna be okay. She's gonna get through things. And I sort of like that sort of like indomitable, shonen hero. And it was sort of interesting to see a character go from a background character in their own story to being the most main character you can have.
If you do intend to continue reading, you're going to love Allison even more for just being an active protagonist. Jay, I know you didn't like the comic very much, but did you have a favorite character in it?
I would have to say the closest thing I had to a favorite character was Allison, because she seemed just as miffed as I was reading that.
That's a lot of sympathy right there.
Yeah, I gotta say, I agree with Jay here. My favorite character was specifically Allison, because she allowed me to put myself in to like her viewpoint of when is 82 going to shut up? When am I going to be allowed to do anything? And when is this entire story not going to be felt like it's being fed to me on a conveyor belt? Because the entire first 2.5 chapters is, hey, why are we going to do a thing? Shut up, you don't need to know that. I know better. We're going to go deal with this the way I know how. Oh, cool. Also have a bunch of lore dumps all at once, so you're more confused. Ah, good. I'm very confused. Oh,
Excellent. Excellent. Mission accomplished.
Is my story going to start yet? Don't worry. The book ends right where it begins. Good.
Yeah, I get the feeling y'all will like, if we do come back to revisit this, I get the feeling y'all will like Wielder of Names much more. It does really involve Allison going out and doing things. And does Allison make the best decisions? Almost never. But she does make decisions, and that is fun. So any plot predictions going forward?
Honestly, it's sort of the interesting thing where I feel like the world is really complex, but to me it seems like the trajectory of this story is going to be the sort of like how Hiroaka is a very paint by numbers shonen story where it's like, you know, this is going to happen, then that's going to happen. Like you can see the narrative progression from the start. I feel like it's going to be a matter of people are going to try to take the key from Allison, and she's going to work her way up through bigger and bigger threats until she gets to the, you know, incrementally gets to the shonen bosses of the 7 demiurges. The way that the world is built, it's easy to bring in new shonen villains, but this really does seem like it's going to be a story centered very directly and very specifically on the growth of Allison as, you know, to some extent a warrior, but also like the idea of like, you know, being a king, you know, taming the world that is in chaos, and her becoming, you know, more of the successor, that, you know, role that had been dumped on her.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to be royalty?
I gotta go in the opposite direction. I think Allison is going to immediately unlock the power in her head and Super Buster Sword all 7 demiurges and rescue Zaid. One book. There's only 2 books in Kill 6 Billion Demons. I'm making that plot prediction.
Nobody tell him we're on book 4 out of 5 right now.
Look, until we read it, it's not true.
How do I know that book 3 and 4 and potentially 5 aren't prequels?
Exactly.
You know what? You got me there. You don't not know that.
Yeah, book 2 is the fast track, and then 3, 4, and 5 is explaining the exposition dumps from chapter 2.
Okay, who is Lord Intra again? He's a sword twink, okay? Man, it's a shame Intra doesn't actually show up, because I feel like he would have instantly become Jay's favorite character. He's a pretty boy, really good with a sword.
That is a one thing about this. There was very few waifu and husbando options, because
do you not stand Seo?
No. Just no. I could do better than a blue masked demon. Lowest of the low.
It's the horns, isn't it? It'll never be the same without them. I believe that wraps up our episode. Thank you all for listening to the OverMangaCast. Remember to subscribe and leave your review of our show. Follow at OverMangaCast on Twitter to find out what we're reading next. And what we are reading next is a blast to the past. We are going back to My Hero Academia, which I feel will be a very refreshing change.
Yay.
As always, if you want to read along, we're doing chapters 45 through 69. And yeah, we'll see you all next time.
We're going from the densest possible thing to arguably the least dense thing. So
we are going back. We are going back to the popcorn of shonen anime.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.